Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor to have the Ambassador of India, Her Excellency Meera Shankar, speak tonight on the very important subject of United States-Indian relations. South Asia and India's pivotal role therein are very much in the forefront of United States foreign policy today, as you all well know. With a large Indian community here in Houston, and Indian students on our campus, we at the Baker Institute and Rice University are well positioned to contribute to the growing educational and intellectual exchanges between India and the United States. It is my pleasure tonight to turn the podium over to the President of Rice University, David Leebron, who will introduce our distinguished speaker. A native of Philadelphia, President Leebron is a graduate of the Harvard College and Harvard Law School. He served as Dean of Columbia University's Law School from 1996 to 2004. David became the 7th president of Rice University, a very small club, on July 1st, 2004. Please join me in welcoming Rice University's President, David Leebron.
Thank you so much, Ed. Ambassador Shankar, Consul General Arora, Mrs. Arora, students, colleagues, friends, good evening. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to Rice University. And it's also wonderful to see so many people from the Indian community here in Houston. It is such a vibrant part, an important part of this diverse city, and we're very grateful not only for your presence here tonight, but for what you contribute to making Houston such an exciting place to live. Since its inception in 1993, Rice's Baker Institute for Public Policy has established itself as one of the leading nonpartisan public policy think tanks in the United States. They do important research on domestic and foreign policy issues with the goal of bridging the gap between the theory and practice of public policy. The Institute and the University continue to provide public forums such as this for some of the world's most important leaders to provide their perspectives on a range of international issues. Tonight is no exception as we welcome Her Excellency Meera Shankar. As she stated earlier this year in remarks to a similar gathering of students, faculty, and scholars in Washington, India and the United States are the world's two largest democracies. We are forged from different faiths and cultures, and we have defined our nationhood in terms of values and ideals and not in terms of identity. Indians and Americans have learned to respect diversity, embrace pluralism, and work across their personal identities for common national purposes. The India-US partnership can and should be a bridge across our interconnected but diverse world. Ambassador Shankar joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1973, and throughout her diplomatic career has held many important assignments, including as director in the Prime Minister's office from 1985 to 1991, Minister of Commerce in Washington, D.C. from 1991 to 1995, leader of the Indian Council of Cultural Relations in New Delhi, overseeing India's cultural diplomacy, and while in the Ministry of External Affairs, she headed two important divisions dealing with South Asian Association of Regional Cooperation and relations with Nepal and Bhutan. After being promoted to the rank of Additional Secretary in 2002, she held the responsibility for the United Nations and international security. She served as Ambassador of India to Germany from December 2005 up until she was appointed Ambassador of India to the United States earlier this year. As she noted in the same speech earlier this year, every 10th person in the world is today a young Indian. That is one of the reasons that we at Rice are committed to fully engaging with India. Indians constitute our second largest population of graduate students. They are today a growing population of our undergraduate population. We are working to build relationships with the Indian Institutes of Technology, Jawaharlal Nehru University, and other institutions in India. Our courses in Indian culture and language in Hindi are often oversubscribed. And so it is with great pleasure that we welcome Ambassador Shankar, Ambassador of India to the United States, to speak with us this evening. Please join me in giving her a warm Houstonian welcome.
Mr. David Lebron, President of Rice University, Mr. Jerjian, Founding Director of the Baker Institute for Public Policy, students, friends who are gathered here today. Let me say that it is a great honor and privilege to speak with you at the Baker Institute on India-US relations 3 weeks before the visit of Prime Minister Manmohan Singh to Washington, D.C., on what is the first official state visit hosted by President Obama. At the outset, I would like to convey my deep condolences to the families of the victims of the incident of wanton violence at a military camp at Fort Hood in Texas yesterday. Our thoughts and prayers are with all those who lost their lives and with the injured, whom we wish a speedy recovery. I have looked forward to visiting the Lone Star State because of its leadership in the United States in so many areas of enterprise and business, its excellent centers of learning like the Rice University and healthcare, its beauty and warm hospitality, and for its thriving Indian American community. I am pleased that we have established a consulate in Houston. Secretary James Baker was in office at an epochal moment in history. The world emerged from the shadow of the Cold War into a zone of uncertainty, but also of hope and optimism. This was also a time of change in India itself. Faced with a financial crisis, India embarked in July 1991 on a path of economic reforms that has radically altered the trajectory of India's economic growth and injected into society a new sense of energy and dynamism. For long, a country that tended to look inward economically, India's economic reforms began the process of India's global integration, increasing India's stakes in the international order. This, together with the profound changes in the geopolitical landscape, provided new openings for refashioning our relationship with the United States, which has today become a key partner for India. For much of India's independent history, the hopes and potential of a relationship between the world's two largest democracies were constrained by the imperatives of the Cold War, not so much by the Cold War itself as by its manifestation in South Asia. The end of the Cold War and economic liberalization in India generated hopes that our two countries would set upon a natural course of closer relations and more productive partnerships. Here, in this institute, where there is so much emphasis on the link between ideas and action, I have to recall that the persistence of doubts and hesitation in our relationship through the 1990s was a reflection of the habits and ideas of the past colliding with new opportunities and potential. Through the terms of President Clinton and President Bush, our governments invested extraordinary political capital in transforming our relationship. This culminated in the historic civil nuclear agreement in October 2008, an agreement that has been as much a symbol as an instrument of the transformation of our relationship. Of course, beyond the civil nuclear agreement, our ties have become genuinely broad-based. The extraordinary breadth of our engagement has taken us into hitherto uncharted territories, including defense, intelligence, and counterterrorism cooperation. I can't think of a field of human endeavor where we are not breaking new grounds and redefining the paradigm of our engagement. Today, the India-US relationship has evolved into a truly comprehensive partnership of mutual trust and confidence, intensifying political dialogue that is increasingly global in reach and deepening strategic understanding. Our relationship has stood the test of public goodwill and political support in both countries, and this support is bipartisan in nature, enabling us to maintain a steady course through election cycles in our two countries. Shared democratic values and converging security interests, especially in the context of Asia and the new unconventional threats that are growing, have led us to forge a closer relationship. However, the real wind in our sails has been the tremendous growth in our economic partnership and the ties between our peoples. Just in the last 5 years, our trade doubled, and US exports to India grew 3 times. In the much scrutinized trade in services, we have a balanced and growing trade in both directions. Today, the US is not only one of our leading trade partners, it is also the leading source of foreign investment, including portfolio investment. US companies have enhanced their innovative drive and competitiveness through their operations in India, which have proved to be highly profitable. A new phenomenon in recent years has been the surge in Indian investment into the United States. In fact, on the basis of annual flows, these now exceed US foreign direct investment into India. In 2007-2008 alone, an estimated US dollars 10.25 billion was invested by Indian companies in the US, which according to industry estimates helped to create an additional 65,000 jobs here. This trend is expected to continue as Indian companies increasingly seek to position themselves in the global economy. While the pace of growth in trade and investment has been gratifying, the overall levels are still modest, and there is huge potential for continuing rapid expansion as the Indian economy achieves sustained high growth. Economic reforms in India, the growing urbanization, and the people and knowledge-intensive nature of our commercial ties, the contribution of the 2.7 million strong Indian American community that has more than doubled in the last decade, and the presence of 95,000 students of Indian origin in US universities have brought our people into an expanding relationship of shared prosperity and mutual benefit. In cities such as Houston and San Francisco, or Bangalore and Hyderabad, in laboratories, universities, and corporate offices, our people, nurtured in diversity and democracy, are discovering comfort in their partnership and opportunities for the future. Wherever I go in the United States, I meet people bursting with ideas, excitement, and impatience to open the doors to a new era of economic partnership between India and the United States. As we enter a new phase in our relationship, at a moment of great global economic uncertainty, our economic partnership will be a new source of strength in our relationship. The United States remains the preeminent economic power, a great center of learning, and the global hub of science, innovation, and enterprise. It has repeatedly shown a resilience to weather economic difficulties, and if investment is a barometer of confidence, Indian investments in the United States stand testimony to that. India is a developing economy, but one on a high growth path. We have weathered the global economic crisis reasonably well, with a growth rate of 6.7% last year. This year too, growth is expected to be between 6.5 and 6.75%, lower than the 9% a year that we were getting accustomed to. But more important, we are witnessing a strong return of investor confidence and business momentum. With a domestic savings rate of 35%, we are optimistic that with prudent policies, continuing reforms, and sound investments, we can return to a sustained growth path of 8 to 10%. A nation of 1 billion people experiencing a growth rate of 8 to 10%, driven principally by the domestic market and domestic savings, will be an anchor of global economic stability and a great economic opportunity, whether it is consumer goods, public infrastructure, or urban services. Our investments in the infrastructure sector alone will have to be US $500 billion over the next 5 years, and another US $500 billion in the next 5 years thereafter. We would need to increase our energy supply by 3 to 4 times and our power capacity 5 times over the next 2 decades to sustain our economic growth and bring 400 million more people into a network of commercial energy. To meet the challenges of economic growth, energy security, and climate change, we need to intensify our search for new domestic energy resources, diversify the energy basket, make energy from coal cleaner, seek new and affordable ways to harness renewable energy, and change the way we consume and use energy. Already, one of the world's largest producers in wind energy, which we will expand further, we have set ourselves a goal of installing 20,000 megawatts of solar energy capacity by 2020 and expanding our nuclear energy from around 4,000 megawatts now to over 60,000 megawatts by 2031-32. The historic India-US Civil Nuclear Initiative has opened new possibilities for reaching that goal. Our emphasis on climate change, reflected in our ambitious National Action Plan on Climate Change, comprising 8 missions, draws from our civilizational tradition that treats nature as a sustaining force, from our contemporary needs, and from our desire to be good global citizens. We look forward to fostering cooperation with the United States in a way that not only helps our 2 countries to achieve their goals, but creates a productive partnership between our economies and also transforms our industries into global leaders in green technology. The real strength and opportunity of our partnership lies in the extraordinary pool of human resources. India will soon be the world's largest population, with an average age of 29 years in 2020. This places enormous responsibility on us, but also creates a resource base that could power prosperity in both countries. Science and technology, education and research, enterprise and innovation are the common thread that will link our joint endeavors in the future. That is why I believe that critical to our future relationship will be a new emphasis on science and technology collaborations and partnerships in higher education. We intend to qualitatively reform and expand our higher education sector, and we intend to create conditions that enable us to tap the best in the world to participate as partners in the expansion of this higher education infrastructure. Last week, our Minister for Human Resource Development visited the United States and found extremely strong resonance among the top universities here. We hope to establish an India-US Education Council to guide our cooperation in higher education and research, which I believe will be of great mutual benefit to both countries in advancing knowledge and preparing their youth to meet the challenges of the 21st century. We will also have great opportunities in advancing food security and improving delivery of health care and research. Our economic future will depend on global peace, stability, and security. And nowhere is that question of greater importance than in Asia, where the center of gravity of global opportunities and challenges of the 21st century lie. We all face multiple challenges, traditional, unconventional, and new, to our collective security. Some of these threats, like proliferation and extremist violence, emanate from India's neighborhood, but have global reach. India and the United States have a shared interest in promoting stability and moderation in this region and in countering the challenge posed by terrorism and extremism. We both have vital stakes in keeping open and safe the sea lanes of communication, which are the arteries through which trade and commerce flow. We are 2 nations blessed with talent, enterprise, and innovation, with a strong emphasis on science and education. we share a sense of comfort derived from our commitment to democracy, pluralism, rule of law, and individual liberty, and above all, a new warmth and purpose in our political ties. I do not see our partnership for prosperity merely in terms of opportunities for multiplying trade and investment, but also for finding solutions to the pressing global challenges of our times, for creating technological leadership for our two countries, for reshaping the nature of economy and business in the 21st century, and for bringing prosperity not just to our people, but also to the wider world. We are at an exciting moment of hope and opportunity as Prime Minister Singh and President Obama prepare to build on the progress we have made to take the relationship to a new level. The heart of their effort will be to create a framework that unleashes the energy and the enterprise of our people to build a relationship that will make our nation safer and more prosperous, and also help to address the global challenges of the planet that we share. Thank you.
Ambassador Shankar has agreed to take questions, and so we have microphones which would enable everybody to hear the question, which is always an advantage.
They can introduce themselves.
And so if you would also, the ambassador asks that you introduce yourselves as you ask the question.
My name is Sam Kanapan, and would you please elaborate on ties between the United States and India in anti-terrorism activities?
We cooperated extensively after the unfortunate terrorist attack in Mumbai. The FBI and the other agencies assisted us in the investigations, helped to decipher some of the evidence. And since then, I think our counter-terrorism cooperation has intensified across a broad range of areas, including capacity building, including exchange of information on a more real-time basis. So I think we are strengthening this area of cooperation. We recently had the visit of Home Minister P. Chidambaram to the US, to Washington, D.C. and New York, where he met with a range of people in the US government. And I think both sides shared a desire to intensify this cooperation. Similarly, our National Security Advisor was here recently, and again, this was one of the themes of the discussions that we had.
I'm Puneet Agarwal. I have a question on what you mentioned about the India-US educational cooperation. Can you expand on that, please?
Well, at the moment, there are a large number of institution-to-institution linkages which have been established on the basis of private enterprise or initiative between Indian educational institutions and US institutions. But right now, I think education is a key focus of this government's agenda, because the agenda of the government is not just to have high growth, but also to ensure that it is inclusive. And in that process, education becomes the key to empowering people and to equipping them to lead a productive life. So recently we have passed a Right to Education Bill, which provides for free and compulsory education for all children in India between class 4 and I think class 8. The next step would be to take it to the secondary level. We are expanding greatly the higher education infrastructure, both through direct government spending and also through seeking to encourage private investment and private-public partnerships. The government will be establishing 8 new Indian institutes of technology, 7 new institutes of management, 20 new institutes of information technology, 3 new institutes of advanced science and research, 14 new innovation universities directly under the central government. So there's a range of new institutions which are planned to be established. And we do hope that we will be able to establish partnerships with US institutions by way of either mentoring or twinning arrangements in curriculum design and faculty exchange, or even in investing in India if that is their desire. But we are not looking so much at commercialization in terms of commercial profits, but through trusts, the way it is done in the US, where you can raise surpluses, but those surpluses are reinvested in education. The third area in this field is the area of vocational education and skill development. And again, there is a huge and massive expansion of this vocational education program and technical training institutes as well as polytechniques, which is planned and ongoing, because this will be critical in equipping people who are not so highly educated with practical skills which the economy requires. And in this entire area, from skill development to higher education, I think that there are very good opportunities for establishing new partnerships between India and the US. What we have today is the Fulbright Nehru Fellowship Program. Under this program, both governments have contributed a total of $4.6 million, which is then used to facilitate exchanges. It covers roughly about 100 short-term exchanges of scholars and experts both ways. But we plan to expand this and possibly double this in a phased way. We're also looking at other new initiatives which hopefully will be announced during the visit of the Prime Minister.
Yes. My name is Kamlesh Lulla. Welcome to Houston again. You talked about educational cooperation. In the field of science and technology collaborations and cooperation, in international scientific councils and circles, one of the major issues in the US and Indian relations is export control, information exchange difficulties and obstacles. What are the governments between India and United States government doing to sort of discuss and ease those sort of issues?
Well, we have a high technology group which functions under the overall ambit of the strategic dialogue that we have. But I would say that perhaps progress needs to be a bit faster, because this continues to be a constraint in terms of realizing our potential. Clearly, the US government itself is looking at how it can ease this framework on a global basis, because it disadvantages the US in terms of global commerce and trade. So hopefully we will make progress in this direction. In the area of science and technology, we have set up a Science Endowment Fund, which is, I think, a total of $30 million, $15 million on each side, which will look at facilitating joint projects and joint programs between the two countries. So this was something which was announced during the visit of Secretary Clinton earlier this year, and we are still in the process of putting in place the nuts and bolts, the administrative framework. Hopefully it will get off the ground soon.
Hi, my name is Devesh Pathak. I'm a CPA by profession. My question is regarding the new, this old law, your US laws of informing about the foreign accounts of Indians or worldwide reporting, and what is the privacy policy of the government of India to protect the Indians who become US citizen?
I'm sorry, I didn't get your question.
There's a
Could you
law
repeat it?
in the USA that a US citizen has to report his foreign accounts, and it's been very strict right now. And what is the policy of the Indian government when a lot of Indians who have become US citizen now and they have foreign accounts in India which they have not reported? And do the Indian government keep the privacy of that accounts, or?
I'm not aware of this, but what I can say is that we have fairly tight provisions for reporting of all financial transactions above a certain value to the Reserve Bank of India. This is under our anti-money laundering legislation, where there are very stringent disclosure norms, and all banks have to report this to the Reserve Bank of India. And so if there's anything suspicious, the Reserve Bank would certainly follow up on it, and so would our unit in the Finance Ministry.
Hello, my name is Scott Norgard. I was just wondering, could you go back and expand on exactly what India did, I think in July of 1991 that you said, that really accelerated its economy? What exact legislation did they pass? What were you referring to?
Sure. I think in 1991, India undertook a series of measures. One was to deregulate the industrial policy internally. Indian industry had been highly regulated through a system of permits and licenses, which had the impact of actually constraining competition. Our industry had no incentive to change because it was a seller's market, protected by high tariff walls externally and by this very tight regulatory system of licensing internally. The net result was that though India was producing a car in the 50s, by the 80s we were still producing the same car, the Ambassador car. And of course it's a nice car, and and it also feeds the nostalgia market in the UK. But I think there was need to change. So one was to dismantle this whole system of licensing for domestic industry. The second was to gradually bring down tariffs across the board. And this process has continued incrementally. And the third was to liberalize our policy with regard to foreign direct investment. This had been a very closed policy prior to 1991. Foreign companies could not invest in India easily, and there were a slew of conditions if they were allowed to invest. But in 1991, we opened up to foreign direct investment, and again, I think that we have continued the liberalization. We did not follow a policy of doing everything at once or a kind of a cold shower as it happened in East Europe. Because we are a democracy, social and political sustainability become as important as economic rationality. And so at each stage, the government has the task of keeping the consensus on the measures that we are taking and assessing the impact it has on our people. But this policy of gradualism in terms of opening up has continued, and the economy has been moving since 1991 in the direction of greater openness and greater liberalization. This has also been as a result of the confidence we have acquired as the results of the liberalization have proved to be beneficial for our country.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Subodh Butcher. As we in United States and President Obama has a great task ahead of him, taking care of 300 million citizens, how in India has Indian government positioned itself to take care of 1 billion people as we progress in growth and wealth? How are we going to do that?
Well, I think that's the big challenge for the Indian government, and I don't think there are easy answers, but this government has emphasis on two aspects. One is to get to maintain a high growth path for the next decade and beyond. Our target is to achieve a growth rate of 8 to 10% in the economy, and this itself will help to move our people out of poverty and give them more opportunities. But while growth is the first principle, it may not be sufficient by itself. So the government combines this with a policy for strong government intervention to promote social development. I just mentioned the whole education scene, which has seen a remarkable step up in government investment. For instance, in this plan, government investment in education will rise from, say, a little over 7% of GDP, of government spending to over 19%. That's a huge leap in terms of the quantum of investment that we are making. We are also combining this with measures to bring about the greater productivity in the rural economy and to reduce vulnerability in the rural economy. So development of infrastructure in the villages is a key priority. We have a program for providing a road to every village, electrification in every village, and telecommunication facilities in every village. And our hope is that this would trigger the next generation of growth in the agricultural economy by enabling food processing, by allowing us to put in place the logistics supply chains for agri-businesses and building linkages, backward and forward linkages between the rural economy and the urban industrial economy. In addition to this, we are looking at a massive program of infrastructure development all over India, because the lack of physical infrastructure is a constraint on our growth. Whether it is ports, airports, railways, I think the whole infrastructure sector will be a key priority for the government, because this will be critical to enabling India to achieve its full potential. We think that quite a bit of this investment will come from government, as it does in most countries, but increasingly we are also seeking to attract private investment and foreign direct investment into these sectors. We've put in place a legal framework and a policy framework which facilitates this. 100% private sector investment, and in most cases 100% FDI is allowed in the infrastructure sectors. We're also encouraging private-public partnerships. For instance, the Bangalore and Hyderabad airports have been developed through public-private partnerships. The Delhi airport is being developed through public-private partnership, where there are private promoters who are expanding and renewing the airport, and they will have a long-term lease to operate it with a revenue sharing arrangement with the government, which continues to own the land, and that's the government's equity in the project. So there are very innovative ways in which we are looking at fulfilling this gap in infrastructure. And at the end of all of it, I would say that India's vigorous democracy will ensure that governments have to be responsive to the needs of the people.
My name is Jen Kim, and she's my friend Tiffany Koo. Yeah.
Last semester, we both studied abroad at India Institute of Technology in Mumbai. And after coming back, during the stay in India, we saw many problems that we thought maybe you could help on, and one of them mainly being the energy problem that you mentioned before. And so the coming summer, both of us, we were thinking of going to India for the summer and do a project maybe in Hyderabad helping the energy problem. And we were wondering what initiatives has the government taken maybe to support U.S. students doing service projects in India?
Well, I think as of now, the only funding really available is through the Nehru Fulbright program, which is what you could perhaps look to tap. But it's mainly for postdoctoral, doctoral programs and academicians. Hopefully, we will be looking at some more initiatives when the Prime Minister comes here.
Thank you so much.
My name is Viren Chawla. I have one question regarding we have the OCI. Under that, we can buy property in India. But there have been some instances where the people have given money to get the delivery of the property has been real tough. Is the government has any agency or something which is foresee all these people who are doing this business in India and selling property overseas to people, whether their interests are really safeguarded?
I think we need to enhance our regulatory framework for the real estate sector and the construction industry. It's not as strong as it should be because we still haven't really developed this as an industry. It's something which has been growing recently. But I think the government very much has on its agenda the need to create an appropriate regulatory framework for the construction industry and the real estate industry.
Madam Ambassador, first of all, please let me welcome you to Houston. My name is Sachin Bami. I had a question about requesting you to share your views about how you foresee Indo-US cooperation growing in the Afghanistan theater. There is talk about additional troop deployment in the US right now. And I know that India has been investing very heavily in the civilian reconstruction effort there. So is there going to be efforts from India purely on the civilian aspect, or do you foresee potentially troop deployment from India given the sensitivities of in the neighborhood? Thank you.
India has a focus on development activities in Afghanistan. We are providing $1.2 billion worth of development assistance to the Afghan government, which is a huge investment for a country like India, which is itself a developing country. This development assistance is being used to build power lines. We've just finished the transmission line to Kabul, which is enabling 24 hours electricity to be supplied to Kabul. We are building schools, medical facilities. We are providing free medical services. We will be building the Afghan parliament. We're building roads. We also have a number of local grassroots level development projects which are actually formulated on the basis of the needs identified by the people themselves. And of course, we are providing training for capacity building and a large number of scholarships to Afghan students. I do not see India getting into a security role in Afghanistan. As you yourself mentioned, there are regional sensitivities, and our effort is to be helpful and not to exacerbate the situation.
Thank you for coming, Ambassador. My name is Raj Salhotra. I'm a freshman here at Rice. And a few weeks back, a foreign minister at Qureshi came to speak with us, and he informed us that the Indian-Pakistan relations have essentially been severed and the talks essentially stopped after the bombings in November in Mumbai. Can you comment on what will be happening with those relations, and given the new attacks in Pakistan that are seemingly every day now, the bombings, will India be cooperating with Pakistan, and sort of where are the sort of what's the next step in the relationship?
Well, I think India and Pakistan had a composite dialogue which was underway for several years and had yielded quite good results. But the basic premise of that dialogue was the assurance conveyed to us by Pakistani leaders that they would not allow their soil to be used for terrorist attacks against India. Now, what we've seen in recent years is a stepping up of terrorist attacks from Pakistani territory in India. We had the attack on the Indian embassy in Afghanistan, and this was followed by the attack on Mumbai. The attack on the Indian embassy in Afghanistan, according to US newspapers, had the involvement of certain elements of the security establishment in Pakistan. The Mumbai attacks were carried out by the Lashkar-e-Toiba, a group which is based in Pakistan, which trained there and which came across by sea to launch these attacks in Mumbai. Clearly, for Indian public opinion, it would be important to see that there is substantive progress in prosecuting those responsible for the Mumbai attacks and bringing them to justice. Our Prime Minister has met President Zardari, our Foreign Minister has met the Foreign Minister Qureshi, and our Prime Minister has said that it's just a practical, it's absolutely a practical necessity, because public opinion in India would not support a substantive dialogue unless we see that there is some seriousness in addressing the issue of terrorism which targets India. Of course, we wish Pakistan well, and we would like to see it move in the direction of greater moderation and greater stability.
Meera ji, welcome to the city of Houston. My name is Tejinder Gill. I'm with the University of Houston. My question is an extension of what Puneet ji and those two young ladies asked. Is there anything you will do for the American students so they are tempted to go to India and study over there? We have hundreds and thousands of Indians coming to US. How many American students go to India and study and get to know what the India is like? It's a great country. If you can do something, they take the courses over there, transfer the credits to US, that would be something really great. So consider this proposal, please.
Well,
Thank
I think
you.
this would be a good idea to see if we can work out arrangements for transfer of credits. I know that in, for instance, Germany, many IITs and IIMs had worked out an arrangement whereby if the students from there went to Germany and did one semester or a year, then that could be counted towards their training back at home. The one problem has been actually, as I mentioned, the physical lack of infrastructure in higher education, because the demand in India is much more than the availability of infrastructure, whereas in the US it's the reverse. The infrastructure is much larger than the demand. So the Indian students who come here basically come here because they are unable to get admission into the institutions of their choice and in the courses that they would like to pursue. They also pay quite heavily when they come here and help to support the US higher education system. So it's a question of, where the demand is. They're not coming here through a government-driven program. They're coming here on the basis of their own initiative, because there is a larger availability of higher education here, which is also quality education. So obviously, once we expand our infrastructure, I'm sure that more American students would be interested in going to India.
My concern was the American students, they should get to know India more. And in the process, get some education and transfer those careers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate that sentiment, and it's certainly something worth pursuing.
Good evening, Madam Ambassador. My name is Sonal Butcher. I think two of the key factors in sustaining economic growth, one is education, which you elaborated on at great length, and I appreciate that. The other is healthcare, and we in the US are in the middle of a big healthcare debate. India has now become the medical tourism hotspot, and yet healthcare is greatly deficient in so many ways. Has the government established any policy to pursue this healthcare deficit?
I think healthcare is the other focus in terms of social development for the government. They are looking at using also new technologies to leapfrog some of the weaknesses, because the government system has not expanded enough, and B, while the private sector providers have grown, I don't think there's a broad-based insurance system in place at the moment. So the government has announced a scheme for a limited degree of health insurance coverage to workers and to the unorganized sector, so that they are not totally without coverage. There are also many innovative schemes which are being run by institutions like the Nirmal Hirdale in Bangalore, where, for instance, the institution itself has a very cheap insurance scheme which allows rural farmers to actually pay a very limited amount, and then gives them the opportunity to even have very complicated heart surgery in the institute should this be required. It's still in a very incipient phase, but I think what would be also interesting for India would be to look at using technology to leapfrog some of the problems of distance, because one of the key areas where healthcare becomes a problem is in the rural areas, where the patient would have to travel to the city to get the local level healthcare center may not have that kind of expertise, and then the patient would have to travel into the city, into a hospital, into a doctor in a city. But if we can use information technology to actually have virtual diagnostic linkages between key institutions and villages or village health centers or rural health centers, I think we could leapfrog this problem. So this is the other area where I think the government is focusing, that is how to use technology for improving delivery of government services. And they have recently appointed Mr. Sam Pitroda as the advisor for using infrastructure to ensure better delivery of government services in the social sector.
Good evening, Your Excellency. My name is Chaitra Rai. I'm a student here at RISE. I have a question for you regarding the Indian government's stand on the proliferation of genetically modified food in the Indian market. Does it have a policy on that, or I'd like to know more, please.
Our policy on genetically modified food has been evolving on I would say genetically modified crops has been evolving. We don't have either a blanket yes or a blanket no. We evaluate on a case-by-case basis and then look at giving permission. Initially, we have given permission for genetically modified cotton. That is the crop for which permission was given. Now I believe that certain food crops are being evaluated, but it's a step-by-step incremental process, and we will examine each case. It's not a blanket, yes, we allow genetically modified crops, or no, we don't, like the Europeans.
Hi, my name is Pankaj Desai. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Good evening, ma'am. My name is Vijay Rajaram. I'm a freshman at Rice. Excuse me for being a little underdressed, but anyways. So you mentioned in your speech that India will soon have the largest population in the world, and also you hit upon issues such as food security, energy security, health security, etc. So it seems to me a sort of a factor that plays a role in all this is population growth. So where do you see, or how do you see, rather, India tackling this issue of population control?
Our population growth has come down from 3% at independence to about 1.5% today. So that's quite a sharp drop. Clearly, it's something we would like to bring down further. But we can't do this through any kind of coercion. It has to be on the basis of enlightened self-interest. And therefore, what we've seen is that education and education of women becomes the key. In the states where there is high female literacy, high female involvement in the economy, actually growth rates are virtually now reaching stabilization levels, such as Kerala. Then you have states which are economically and socially backward, where growth rates continue to be high. So the key for India, I think, would be to step up efforts on female literacy and female empowerment.
Hi, Pankaj Desai. First of all, thank you very much for your speech. You have taken us through a journey from the 1990s to the current. You spoke about the economic opening up of India and what it has meant for India and for the US. You've spoken about issues on counterterrorism and cooperation in those areas. My question to you is, if you were to make a speech at the Baker Institute for Public Policy in the year 2030 or 2035, what would you like your message to be to this esteemed audience?
Well, I think that the message in 2030 would be that India would have become a middle-level developing country, that we would be probably one of the biggest markets in the world, that this market would increasingly power growth in the Asian region and in the wider world, and also the fact that so much of our youth will be young will actually provide the sinews of global economics and commerce. We see in many of the countries across the world that the demographic curve is going down. And on the other hand, we also see an increasing discomfort with immigration. So I presume that there will be a growing trend of outsourcing or offshoring of services across a much broader spectrum from which India will benefit. I see the relationship between India and the United States becoming stronger across this very broad spectrum, and I see that we will be anchors for stability and prosperity.
Good evening, Madam Ambassador, and welcome to Houston again. My name is Keshu Patel, and recently I inquired in Ahmedabad, Gujarat, just to buy a land for medium-sized house that cost about 1 crore rupees. My question is, what are the steps the government is taking to narrow down the very poor and rich people?
I think that's the whole focus of the policy of inclusive growth. In the past, we have followed a policy which placed emphasis on distribution And that was the whole genesis of our policy post-independence. But we found that without growth, actually, we were just redistributing poverty, and the cake was growing smaller and smaller without our ability to grow the cake. So I think one of the first principles that India will have to embrace is growth per se, and then to combine this growth with measures to ensure that all its people can participate in this growth process. And that is this whole program for inclusive growth. But it's not going to be a journey which will be without challenges, and it is something where we will constantly have to strive to fulfill the aspirations of our people.
My name is Prabha Bala, and welcome back to Houston, Ambassador. Could you comment on how India is responding to the global pressure to reduce consumption that leads to pollutants in the air, and at the same time with a view to ensuring India's own growth and development?
I think for India, we attach a great deal of importance to the issue of climate change or global warming, because we will feel the impact of it, even though our contribution to the global warming which has occurred has been minimal. As of today, I think India's greenhouse gas emissions are in the region of 1.1 tons. The US per capita. The US's emissions are 20 tons per capita. China's are in the region of 5 to 6 tons per capita. That's the level of distinction that you see in the quantum of emissions that are taking place. But we have a national action plan on climate change, which has been adopted under the Prime Minister's leadership. And this plan has both mitigation and adaptation aspects. We have 8 national missions which have been announced under this plan, which include a solar energy mission, where I mentioned that we will try to target 20,000 megawatts of solar energy generation by 2020. At present, our renewable energy portfolio accounts for 9% of our installed generating capacity, which is quite high for a developing country, I think probably one of the largest. But this is mainly wind and microhydel. Solar, as yet, we haven't really had any substantive expansion because of the costs. So I think the key will be to try to bring down costs and make the technology more robust. At present, solar energy generation is anywhere between 10 to 13 times more expensive than conventional energy. And when you look at that, then you see that unless we are able to really bring down costs, then we won't be able to use this on a large scale. But the government is looking at kick-starting the program by incentivizing solar energy production in the expectation that in the future, as the price of fossil fuels goes up and the price of solar energy comes down, at some point the curves will cross, or that graph will cross. And so this is with an eye to the future. In the negotiations in Copenhagen, or the forthcoming negotiations in Copenhagen, India will play a constructive role, but based on the principles of common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities, which was enshrined in the Kyoto Protocol. Our challenge is to try to grow, because I think growth is the imperative for India. It's difficult for us to deal with the issue of climate change by perpetuating poverty in India. I think that is something we would find difficult to accept.
Time for one more question.
Thank you very much again. And I have one more question. I'm studying here at Rice University, but I'm originally from South Korea. And recently, South Korea and India signed for CEPA, the CEPA, which is similar to FTA. But I heard that we don't actually use the term FTA, considering the Indians' concern regarding the rapid change. And I also remember when Korea signed for FTA with US, it was really huge problem or social issue in Korea too. So I want to know how India is going to deal with such concern or like future collaboration.
I think that India is looking to expand its trade with East Asia, and we have now signed a free trade agreement with ASEAN. We also have, which has just been concluded and signed, we hope to take it to the next level to trade in services and investment. We have bilateral free trade agreements with several of the countries in South Asia. And of course, as part of our Look East policy, we are negotiating now such agreements with both South Korea and Japan. We hope that all these can become building blocks for a larger Asian economic community because the locus of economic dynamism in the global economy is moving towards Asia. Clearly, these are not pathways which you can predict will go absolutely smoothly. But we believe that creating greater opportunities for trade and investment will help to spur further growth in Asia. And of course, we should try to do it in ways which produce win-win situations and minimize the problems that this can cause.
Thank you very, very much, both for your wonderful talk and the very full and candid way which you answered a wide array of questions. Please join me once more in thanking Ambassador Shankar for her visit to Rice.